Hey guys, so basically this video is a culmination of several years of logs that were kept on the old Jacksonville Beach pier. And so basically what they did, every day they took the water temperature, had the wind direction, what was biting, and when the pier closed after Hurricane Floyd destroyed it, and I worked up there as a teenager, they told me I could have them. And I took them, and I'm glad I did because I have learned a ton of information from these logs. I mean, this is 5 or 6 years I have worth of logs, and very well detailed. And so the last 2 weeks I've been going through each one and just trying to see what temperature certain fish showed up at. And it's amazing that throughout the years that it was like clockwork. Every time a certain temperature hit, this is when that fish would show up. Now, before we go into it, I will say there are some exceptions that I've noticed, because here in Northeast Florida where we sit, and this is for water temperatures in Northeast Florida, but I do believe they should apply to other areas as well, because these are the same fish. We have migratory fish and we have resident fish, but the migratory, of course, they go with the water temperatures. That's how they fall, and they get pushed by the water temperatures. The resident fish, while they're here all year long, they may not bite so good. Say like sheephead. We're not going to really talk about it because we don't catch too many just fishing out in the surf. But the sheephead, they're here in Northeast Florida year round. You can catch them year round, but the bite is really triggered when that water temperature drops. So like I was saying, the exceptions that we're talking about. So south of Northeast Florida, the Gulf Stream's much closer. So that water has a tendency to warm up faster. So if we're, say, 60 degrees here in Northeast Florida, which is too cold for most fish, except whiting and bluefish. So if it's 60 here, it could be 68, 69, not too far south of us because of the Gulf Stream being closer. So those fish that are pushing ahead with that warmer temps, it could be drastically warmer south of us. So it's going to push those fish into this area a little bit sooner than normal. So in a few of the years, we had bluefish showing up when the water temperature was 57, 2 or 3 years on these books. And what I found out is down south, the water was about 10 degrees warmer. Now, usually it's not that drastic. Like right now, as we speak, this is February 8th. Right now in Jack's Beach, the water temperature is 58. You go to Daytona, it's 62. So what that tells me in that year, just say it was 58 here, it'd have been 68 there. Drastic difference. And so it pushes those fish ahead. It works like that with Pompano sometimes too. So these temperatures I'm giving you, they are not scientific evidence. They've just been handwritten for several years. And the evidence is in what was written down. Another thing I noticed one year, now, as you know, with Pompano, and we'll get to that, they like the cooler temps as well. But there was one year for about a week straight on the Jack's Pier, and this was when the limit was 10 per person. There was a solid week of several people catching their limits. And the crazy thing is the water was 85 degrees. So I said, okay. And I had my name in there too, but I was young and I didn't pay attention to all of this stuff. I just fished, and if they were biting, I caught them. If they weren't, I played video games in the arcade at the pier. What I found out is there was a hurricane that hit north, I believe in South Carolina, North Carolina. And about 4 days after that hurricane hit, we started catching Pompano. So my theory, and it's only a theory, is that when that storm hit up there, it pushed those fish that were congregating in that area south much sooner than they would have been otherwise. Because the water was already cool in that area. As you know, the hurricanes don't care about cool water. They come from the south and they'll go right into the Carolinas, even if the water's in the low 60s or 70s. And I believe that's what happened. So that's just an exception. Those are things to look for, guys, when you see a storm hit north of Northeast Florida and it's in the fall, those fish, they're not going to stick around. They usually head south sooner. And in another aspect, that's how we sometimes miss our pompano run here in Northeast Florida. If we get an extended time of a lot of rough weather, they just completely bypass us. Or you'll have to go into the river and catch them. But that's how it is. There's a lot of variables to fishing, but I hope this helps. It's almost like a little teaching lesson that I had to teach myself, because writing it down from each book, it was amazing that these fish, well, they just follow the same pattern. And once we know those patterns, we can know that, okay, if the water temperature is at this point, it's possible that we're going to catch these fish. So, of course, with whiting, 58 degrees, 58, 57, that is about the cutoff that I learned in these books. And that's what's been holding true here lately. So once it dips below 57, it really shuts the bite down. 58, we're catching them on the Diet Pepsi like I've mentioned before. But when that water temperature hits 63, that's when you notice a huge uptick in the amount of whiting being caught. And the ideal temperature, that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about when we first see them caught, and then the ideal temperature in these books, between 64 and 67. Those are some of the days where, believe it or not, guys, I mean, we don't see it as much anymore, but there were days where the whole book was filled with people catching 70, 80 whiting. 67 degree water, 65, 66, very good water. So for the whiting, guys, 58 degrees, you'll catch them. When it hits between 64, 67, that's peak. But as you know, with whiting, they're here year round, so you can catch them year round. But all I'm saying is, when that water is in the mid 60s and you want to load your freezer with whiting for the next few months as it warms up, that's when to get them. And if you like to catch them throughout the year, remember, around the full moon of each month, there's some big whiting that come in shallow, and that's when I get some of the biggest whiting each year, is around the full moon. And for whiting, always check the water temperatures, because in the summer we get thermoclines, and if you don't know what those are, it's an upwelling that's caused from a lot of west wind, and so it pushes cooler water that's on the bottom inshore. And that water, some years in these books, it went from 83 degrees to 4 days later down to 68. And once again, the whiting catches were unbelievable, but also a lot of spots and croakers were with those catches. So keep those apps on your phone to watch the water temperatures. Now, the thermoclines, of course, if you're a boater, and you like to fish for kings and such, they're terrible for that. They will drive those fish. Those fish will follow the warm water. But for the cool water guys that we like the whiting, and also bring the sheephead and drum. They like that cooler weather too. The next guy that everybody as a surf fisherman loves to fish for, Pompano. So out of the several years of logs, the main water temperature that we saw the first Pompano was 63 degrees. Now, there weren't a lot caught in that 63 degrees. And so for the ideal temp, we had 66 to 72. That's when we saw a ton of Pompano caught, guys. So we're coming up on it. It's 58 here in Jax. Melbourne, 67. So they're down there. And as it warms up, they'll be coming in here in a fury. And hopefully we will have no COVID lockdowns like we did in 2020. Right in the peak season, the water was like 68 degrees. And we were catching a lot of whiting, and some nice pompano were showing up. And then, boom, the beaches were shut down. So that school of fish just evaded getting caught. And we'll talk about bluefish. Like I said, they'll show up sometimes earlier because of what's happening south, and also in the winter, what's happening north. If it gets colder faster, they'll push them. As you know, bluefish, they are here year round, but the springtime and the fall, when that water temperature is about 68, is when we get the 12 to 18 inches. And especially in the fall, when the mullets start migrating south in the cooler water, big bluefish. Now, if you want to catch large blues, I've not seen a whole lot of reports of them in the last few years, but in all the books I have, every year when that water was between 70 and 78 in the spring, there were numerous 9 and 10 pound blues caught. So if you want to target them, get a big mullet or big piece of cut bait or a big spoon. And when that water's in that area, it doesn't hurt to try it. And always watch for where the birds are diving. Sometimes where those birds are diving, and you'll see splashes when the water's like this. Could be big bluefish. And if you like to smoke them, I've had smoked bluefish. It's pretty good. We'll talk about speckled trout next. 70 degrees was the mark that usually the first one was always caught. Now trout, if you like to catch speckled trout from the surf, they're very tasty and they're a lot of fun to catch. You can catch them on a float rig with live shrimp, finger mullet on the bottom with a Carolina rig or a mortician rig. Chip Brundage, the sinker guy, has a video on that. Or early in the morning with top water or late in the evening with top water. Now the ideal temperature for those guys, now 74 to 78. That's when a lot of fish, a lot of speckled trout are caught. In fact, something I had never seen before in over 30 years of fishing in the surf, this past December 2020, the water was 72 degrees in the second week of December, and we were killing the speckled trout on the beach. I have never seen that in Jack's Beach in over 30 years of fishing. So if the water's the right temperature, they don't really care about the month. It's all about that water temperature. So like I said, 74 to 78, and they will hit as it gets warmer, but you better get out there first thing in the morning or on an overcast day with a nice sea breeze, because when that water gets hot, those fish get sluggish on the surf. And as the sun comes up, man, that bite will shut down real fast. We'll talk about some redfish now. 62 degrees was the average temperature that we saw the first redfish on the Old Jack's Pier. And that, just think, that's a pier, but that counts like Volano rocks, Fort Clinch rocks. This is all gonna run the same because these fish, they all run the beach together. And the pier is just an obstacle that they're coming along and they stop at, same as the rocks. So those reds will be cruising up and down the beach about 62. The most reds that we see caught is about 68 to 75 degrees. And definitely the fall seems to be much better for the redfish bite, guys, because one, you got sand fleas everywhere, and two, you got mullet everywhere. And those fish love them. Same thing in December when I was catching the trout, we were also catching reds right along with them. And now the big bull reds that are in the surf, they tend to bite a little bit better as it gets 65, 66 degrees. So it's fun stuff. Then you got the black drum. Those are in the surf too, 62 degrees. That's when I'll start going after them when it hits about 62, 63. The ideal temperature that I've seen for them is around 67 to 74 degrees. And that mark. Now they're another fish, same as the red and the trout. They can be caught pretty much all summer long. However, the warmer the water gets, the less the bite gets. Now, there are days when we've had clear water at the pier and the water was 85 degrees and you can see the drum and you'll get a few, but it's usually first thing in the morning or right before dark. Sometimes during the middle of the day, you'll see the school and they will not touch a thing. And then when you catch them, they're hot as a French fry. So keep that in mind. The thing that we like here in Northeast Florida is the cooler surf temps. Cool means lots of fish in the cooler. Then we'll come to the flounder. I don't know if a lot of people target flounder in the surf, but they're there. You can catch them along the rocks like Volano, Fort Clinch, and Nassau. And we would usually see the first flounder caught on the old pier around 64, 65 degrees. And they would run all the way through the fall. But the best time was when the water temperature was about 68 to 76 degrees, guys. Once it got hotter than that, the fish would actually move out deeper. They would move almost to the end of the pier, and very sluggish. They would eat the bait, but you'd have to let them eat it for a long time. This fall, when it cooled down and the mullet were everywhere, the water was about 70 degrees. They were biting great. Now, all of this, it may work in the river, but the river's a total different animal than the surf. It really is. It's the same fish a lot of times. For instance, my buddy, he was catching trout in the river today as I'm giving you this water temperature report. Water's like 53 degrees. Okay, they're catching trout in the river still. You go to the beach, no trout around. So everything you know about the river, you need to change it for the surf, because it's really not the same. Same fish, but different characteristics. And I can't explain it. It's just how it is. I'll just take sheephead, for example. There are days when in the river, they're killing the sheephead when the water's 55 degrees. When the pier is open, if the water is 55 degrees, not a bite. Water hits 62, we kill them. So that's how it is. Then we'll talk about Spanish mackerel, and that'll be the last one for this video. I have more for like the big jacks, tarpon, barracuda, kingfish, triple tail. We have all of that in these books. So if that's something y'all would be interested in hearing at a later time, or I can just, each video I put out, I'll add another fish and just talk a little bit about it, I'll do it. But for the Spanish, 63 degrees was the average temp when they showed up. And when people were limited out constantly, it was around 68 to 72. That's it. And they're catching them on gotchas, plugs, spoons. They'll hit live shrimp on the float. They'll hit free line, finger mullet. And they're a lot of fun when they get into thick schools, guys. And if you've never caught them, one thing I suggest is when you take one off the hook, make sure you have a rag or a good bucket of water to wash your hands. Because if you don't, by the end of the day, you're going to look at your rod and it's going to look like a Spanish mackerel because their scales will be all over it. So I hope this video helps a little bit or a lot. This is just what I look for when I'm fishing. I check the water temperature. I'm ADD with the water temperature. I look at it every day up and down the coast to see the trends. Is it warming? Is it dropping? Because I just know when it hits that certain degree, I can start targeting this fish. So after looking at all of this, I came up with like the ideal water temp. And it's sort of a big gap, but between 68 and 78, we can catch literally everything. When it's that water temperature, you can pretty much choose what you want to fish for and target. Drum, flounder, speckled trout, pompano, whiting, bluefish. You just have to rig accordingly, guys. The pier's not like just fishing the surf, but it does help to know what shows up when. There's days on the pier where I'll have 6 different species caught all on a float rig. And I've used float rig from the surf now on the calmer days and done well in Pompano. And caught the big whiting, will hit the float rig sometimes as well. But if you have any questions, please send them, because I have a ton of information in these books that will go a long way. One I didn't really want to tell you because it's sort of depressing when they show up, but the catfish usually show up around 65 degrees. Not a lot of fun. And as you know, when the catfish are here, when the dirty water shows up, they're right along with it. But that's all I have for you guys. I hope this helps. Let me know what you think. And we'll be back with another video soon. Tight lines, guys.